Welcome to this demo of IBM Planning Analytics for Financial Consolidation. As you may or may not know, planning analytics is used by many organizations for many different applications, including things like budgeting and forecasting, cost allocations, management accounts, profitability analysis, to name but a few. And some of our customers also use it for financial consolidation, and this demo will show some of the capabilities that planning analytics has in this area. Now, in this demo, I will show some of the capabilities from two different user perspectives. I will show the process from the point of view of Erica, and she is responsible for submitting actual numbers for one operating company, as well as some forecast data. I'll also spend quite a bit of time from the perspective of the group finance manager, the person who is responsible for ultimately managing the whole process and producing the group accounts pack. Okay, so let's start with the group finance manager. Let's log on to Planning Analytics Workspace in an administrator role. And it takes us into a book for financial consolidation. And this book really allows the group finance manager to manage the entire process. It has sections for identifying adjustment companies, for processing intercompany eliminations. It has administration screens for viewing workflow status, running consolidations, and the ability also to look at and interact with output summaries, reports, and dashboards. And I guess that really is the goal of the process, is to produce these outputs, these summary reports, and these dashboards. And let's start by looking at a dashboard. And the dashboard really allows us to display and interact with key performance indicators. So we're looking at actual data in pounds, and it allows the users to filter the data on individual companies, individual groups, different parts of the reporting structure. And we'll see we're missing some data for this subsidiary at the moment, but we do have a bigger picture, a better picture of the overall group. So it's important to point out here that the only input numbers in this environment are the period values. All of the other values, the year-to-date, the rolling 12 months, the 12 months average, etc., all of these are calculated automatically using the powerful underlying in-memory engine of planning analytics. So users can filter on different financial metrics to see the kind of different views of that, see the trend over time. They can also look at the group analysis radial underneath and choose a metric, and they can drill down on either the management structure or the statutory structure down through different levels within that particular reporting hierarchy. Okay, so that's a look at some of the outputs that we can produce. Similarly, if we come back to the main book, I can look at those numbers in a more tabular format. So here again, I can look at the entire profit and loss structure, for example, with the management roll-ups, and I can see the three divisions that make up the management structure, as well as the group eliminations entity, and then underneath that, the individual subgroups and entities that make up that structure. So we, as I say, we're missing some numbers for one of our subsidiaries, but we'll go through the process of collecting those numbers in a moment. Just one other thing to point out, in addition to producing the numbers in dashboards and tables, we can also produce formatted output. And this is an example of a pack that has been produced using the Excel add-in Planning Analytics for Excel. We've then published the report up so that users can consume it either using Excel or via the Planning Analytics Workspace browser environment. Again, we can look at individual entities. So we could look at this particular subsidiary, which in fact is a euro denominated company. So we could look at its numbers in both GBP or its local currency. And behind the scenes, there is an administrator cube where we're storing different rates for balance sheet data as well as profit and loss data. Okay, so those are some of the outputs that we can produce and interact with. One other thing I'll just point out here is if we have entities which are trading with each other across the group, so this particular entity has got a line in here for intercompany sales, this value of 11,901. If I want to see how that's made up and who the different entities that it's trading with, I can drill to that and I can see both the numbers, the breakdown of the numbers that have been input, as well as the numbers that have been input by the counterparty. That's what they're saying is the equivalent in their books of the transaction. Unfortunately, we don't have any differences for us to reconcile or worry about. Okay, so those are some of the outputs that we want to produce. Let's now have a look. You know, the goal, as I said, is to produce outputs from the underlying data and process. So let's look at some of the capabilities from the point of view of a subsidiary user. So let's switch roles, log on as Erica. And Erica, when she logs on, has a similar kind of book, you know, with a landing page and kind of links into the different screens and steps that she needs to complete. But slightly different because it focuses really on the tasks and processes for a subsidiary. So let's have a look at a couple of those. If I click on the import GL data button, then it takes me to a view of the current submission, and I don't really have any data at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import some local data, which is kind of the first and the main task for Erica to do. She can run a process which picks up a local file, and in this case we've got a file here called S1111 period 620 actuals all, and that's the file that I'm going to bring in, which in fact populates both my reported value column within here, and it also in fact actually populates my my balance sheet. So I'm pulling in all the numbers from both the P&L and the balance sheet as part of that process for importing data. Okay, so that's kind of the first step complete, to bringing in the local values as the reported value. But she may want to post some journals, so there may be some recurring journals or some corrections that she needs to make to the numbers. And this post journal screen here allows her to do exactly that. So here she might want to put in an entry, which is a value to correct some GL numbers. We'll leave the values at 100, and maybe we're going to debit the administration reporting accounts, and we're going to credit the salaries accounts. And those are the entries that I'm happy with for period 6, which is the current reporting period. And I'm going to post that journal, and then there's a little window to confirm that that process has completed. If I come back and look at my profit and loss and just refresh that, I can see that it's dropped in a new journal in pounds, or I could look at that in the input currency of euros, which was 100 euros, and I can see both the debit and the credit being applied correctly. And for the purposes of understanding and being happy and validating with the numbers, it's also captured the source of the data. So it was a journal from a user called Erica, and it's also captured the comment to explain that it was a GL correction. And it's also captured the date and time of when that particular value was posted, so that we've got a really good understanding of how our numbers are arrived at when it comes to reporting and audit purposes. Okay, so if Erica's happy with her numbers, then she can submit the profit and loss. And what that will do, so she may look after more than one entity. In this case, she doesn't. She just has to select S1111, and we can see that the data entry screen goes to locked. Now, what she can do from here, in fact, is, as you may have kind of worked out, she could go to the formatted pack that we saw at the start, and she could run her profit and loss in the local currency, or she could run it in the reporting currency of pounds. She could run both the profit and loss and the balance sheet. And she may be happy just to look at the numbers within Workspace, although if she did want to download the report into a PDF or into Excel, she's got that capability from here as well. While we're in Workspace, this is planning analytics, so not only can we do the financial consolidation, we can do planning. So within here, maybe she wants to update the current forecast. The current forecast is the Q2 forecast, and maybe she just wants to do a quick update, and just to point out that because it's a forecast and we've got period 6 values, they are reflected in the forecast as read-only numbers, but maybe she wants to update the values for the remaining periods. And just as a very quick change, let's say that she's going to forecast a value for Q3 sales of 70,000, and that's going to prorata that across the periods that make up Q3. And that's the only change that she really wants to make to her forecast. And when she's done, she again hit the submit button, choose the subsidiary she wants to submit for. And again, those numbers go to read only, and that forecast is locked in. Okay, so that was just a quick look at some of the capabilities from the perspective of the subsidiary. Now let's turn our attention back to the point of view of the group finance manager. And that person again will log on to Planning Analytics Workspace, and that link takes them straight into the book that we started with. And from here, what I can do as an administrator, I can view the elimination map, and the elimination map really is just telling Planning Analytics where to perform the intercompany elimination. So each group and subgroup has an elimination entity to perform eliminations either within that group or within the subgroups, depending on where the subsidiaries and the counterparties intersect. As an administrator, I can also do things like updating the exchange rates. So if I wanted to update the exchange rates for the profit and loss, I'd update the period average. For the balance sheet, I would update the period end, but that's already filled in. There's nothing I really need to do here. What else can I do? If I've got a lot of entities, users and companies submitting, then maybe I want to see the workflow status of the individual entities, and just to have a view of who's up to date or who's holding up the process, so I can take action against those people potentially. But also, when I've collected data, what I probably want to do is really run the consolidation, and what this will allow me to do is effectively process the intercompany eliminations and post the correct entries at the different levels, the different adjustment companies in my two different structures. So I'm going to run the consolidations, process the eliminations for those. I also get some audit information so I can understand the last date and time of when the consolidation was run and by whom the process was run. And having done that, I can then go and I can look at my consolidated picture. So I can look at the numbers from the point of view of the overall group, and I can see the individual numbers which are being submitted by different entities. And I can see for this subsidiary S1111 the GBP values that they've reported, and also I can see the local currency values, which in this case are euros for this particular entity. So having collected the data, having run the consolidation process, I automatically get an updated picture within my consolidated pack. If I return to my dashboard, which was I think one of the first things that we looked at, I can now see that the key financial metrics are updated to reflect the new figures that have been collected from Erica for the inputs that she has done for subsidiary S1111. We also had a quick look at forecasting, and we saw that Erica was able to update the latest forecast for Q2. So we have the kind of the overall picture for Q2, and we can see the numbers for this particular subsidiary here. What we may want to do is to copy the data, is to create a new forecast. For example, let's say we now want to create a Q3 forecast. And that's something that we can, as an administrator, we can update the entire environment to add that version in to allow us to capture some new forecast information. And here I can see that I've now got effectively a blank placeholder to capture data for that forecast. And maybe as a starting point, I want to populate that with data from the Q2 forecast. And this kind of this process and this window allows me to do exactly that. So here I can say my source item is going to be the Q2 forecast, and my target item is going to be the Q3 forecast. And it's going to copy a large chunk of the model. It's going to copy my exchange rates. It's going to copy my profit and loss inputs, my balance sheet inputs, as well as my intercompany inputs. And when I hit the button, that will go away. Take a few seconds to copy that data for all entities, all accounts, all periods from version 2 to version 3. And I can see that the numbers are effectively one and the same, but now we can go through that process again. We could either update the numbers from a top-down perspective. We could possibly look at the overall group picture, or we could look at individual subgroups and maybe decide that we want to increase the sales by 3%, for example. And we could do like a top-down sort of forecasting process. But really the whole point of dipping in here was to demonstrate that clearly what we started out at looking at here was planning analytics from the point of view of financial consolidation, but clearly it also has some key strengths in budgeting and forecasting, and it gives us a single environment to manage all of our key financial processes, both from the point of view of a group consolidation perspective, but also gives us lots of flexibility and capabilities at the subsidiary, at the data entry level. So thank you for this time, and I hope this was a useful demo.